tan importante es la libertad para las sociedades y qué tan importante es la propiedad privada? ¿Pueden convivir la democracia y la libertad? Estas son algunas de las preguntas que se ha hecho el profesor Hans-Hermann Hoppe, uno de los grandes pensadores del libertarismo, de la defensa de la libertad, un discípulo distinguido de Mary Rothbard, uno de los grandes filósofos liberales o libertarios de los Estados Unidos. Yo quiero agradecer la presencia al profesor Hoppe por estar aquí. Él acaba de recibir el premio Una Vida por la Libertad que otorga la Fundación Caminos de la Libertad de Grupo Salinas. Voy a hacer con el profesor Hoppe esta conversación en inglés, porque yo no hablo bien el alemán y él tampoco habla muy bien el español. Professor Hoppe, thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you.
And let me start with freedom. Why is freedom still important at a time when some thinkers, some philosophers believe that equality or maybe other virtues would be more important?
Freedom is important because we have to be able to act independently of other individuals. And in order to act independently of other individuals, we need private property. Private property makes it possible for us to pursue our own individual goals without needing the permission of other people to do so. And freedom is nothing else but the ability to use your own property according to your own desires and your own wishes, without, however, of course, interfering with the physical property that belongs to other people.
So private property is essential for liberty?
Is absolutely essential for liberty.
You have been critical of democracy, and you have said that in some cases democracy can be an obstacle to freedom and to, of course, private property rights.
There are two definitions of democracy. Ludwig von Mises has given a definition that says democracy is the ability of people to decide that they want to separate from other people with whom they do not agree. In that case, you indeed rule yourself. So he allowed the secession and thought the secession of a group from a larger group would be the definition or the permission to secede from a larger group. That would be the definition of democracy. Then you rule yourself. But the traditional definition of democracy is, of course, majority rule. Majority determines what rules hold and what rules do not hold. And in that sense, democracy is, of course, a mild form of communism. It introduces majority rule. I can no longer determine what to do on my own with my own property, but there is an institution that can interfere with my property and can tell me you cannot do with your property what you want to do with your property, despite the fact that you don't damage anybody else's property.
So if the majority, for example, decides that you should not use your property, you should not rent your property in a platform, in an internet platform, they shouldn't be able to say that even if they're the majority?
Yes, they should not be able to say this. If we have a vote here in this room, and I don't know how many we are here, of the 10 or 12 people that we have here, if 6 then say the wallet that Hoppe has in his pocket that should be distributed equally among all of us, that would fit the definition of modern democracy. Whereas the view of Mises would be, if I don't like this type of decision, then I must have the right to secede from this group of people and do with my property what I want to do with my property. So as under democracy, you can become a slave of other people, and you can become the slave of the majority view that people hold.
You have been described as one of the world's foremost representatives of anarcocapitalism. What is anarcocapitalism?
Anarcho-capitalism is nothing else but a private law society. All laws hold for everybody equally, and the standard private law applies to everyone. There exists no such thing as public property in public law. Public law is, in the view of anarcho-capitalists, not law at all. It is a violation of private property and freedom. Public law is state-made law, majority-made law.
But can we have laws without a state?
Yes, we can have laws without a state. In every small village, you can see that people can arrange their own affairs. They have natural authorities, people who have prestige in a community, whose word counts for more than other people's word. And whenever we have a dispute, we turn to those people, and those people then decide who is right and who is wrong. But those people themselves are also subject to further control. They can, again, in case people have the feeling that they're making wrong decisions, that they can also be accused of having committed a crime. And the difference to the current situation is, if you try to complain about a state law, the decision whether you are right or the state law is right is made by employees of the state itself. So the problem, and I will speak in my little speech afterwards about this problem too, is no one in any conflict, it can never be the case that one of the parties into the conflict is the party that makes the decision. We must have a neutral arbiter that decides who is right in any type of conflict, rather than having one side of the two conflicting parties always having the last word. That's what we have currently. Whenever you complain about a law that the state passes, and go to court and complain about it, the decision whether you are right or the state is right will be made by a state employee, which makes it predictable then what the outcome of this decision will be. If I go, for instance, and say, look, I never agreed to pay taxes, and go to the Supreme Court and say, I never signed a paper that where I declared I will pay taxes, there will be no independent third parties consulted. Am I right, or is the state right? No, a state employee decides who is right, and of course you can predict what the outcome of that will be. They will most likely not even hear my complaint. It will be dismissed out of hand.
But can we actually live in a society without a state, or is it just a utopia?
If you look around in your daily life, we live without a state. Most of our activities occur without state interference. In every small village, you see that people arrange their own affairs without an external policeman come and making a decision. Most people have never any contact with the state in their lives.
Professor Hoppe, you Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, has presented himself as an anarcocapitalist. Do you think he's an anarcocapitalist, and what do you think of the policies that he's conducting?
Now, I have given recently an interview about this subject, and I have heavily criticized Mr. Milei. I have not disputed that what he has done has been a great improvement over the situation that existed previously. I think in a way it was easy to improve a situation that was as catastrophic as the situation in Argentina was. So I admitted that he had done some good things. I also realized that he could not do everything that he wanted to do because there are parliaments and he needs certain majorities in order to make his decision. On the other hand, because he declared himself to be an anarcho-capitalist and claimed that he had learned from Rothbard and from me what that is, I felt that I was entitled to criticize him from the point of view of an anarcho-capitalist. That I have been criticized by people, but isn't he better? That was never in dispute. In dispute was only, does what he currently exercises, is that compatible with declaring himself an anarcho-capitalist? And there I must say, there were certain things that were clearly violation of these principles. For instance, he did lower some taxes, but he also increased taxes, even though he said himself, and that is a view of anarcho-capitalists, that taxation is theft. People have never agreed to it. It was imposed to it. You will be jailed if you don't pay your taxes. These are not voluntary payments. So he did that. Then he said, I would abolish the central bank. Mm-hmm. The central bank is the institution that is, from the point of view of state power, the most important institution, because they can simply print money out of thin air. Mm-hmm. Without a central bank, you would have to rely entirely on taxes. And that if you would have to rely entirely on taxes, the states could not do many of the things that they currently do. Imagine, for instance, how difficult it is to go to war without being able to print the money that is necessary to pay the soldiers, buy the weapons and so forth, and only rely on contributions, tax contributions that people make to it. Wars have been made much easier because of central banks, and they would be far more difficult without central banks. So even though he promised he would do this, he has not done it, and I know, yes, he did need permission to do this, but he did not even try. He tried various other things and sought majorities for various other changes in legislation, but he did not make any attempt to close down the central bank. And if the central bank is closed down, then you can, of course, immediately get rid of the problem of inflation, because inflation is solely caused by the printing of money.
It's only a monetary phenomenon, as Milton Friedman used to say.
Yes, in that regard, I'm not a Friedmanite, but in that regard, he is perfectly right. Inflation is a purely monetary phenomenon. But my most ardent criticism of his was his view that he takes on foreign policy. The standard view of libertarians, of anarcho-capitalists, is you stay out of other countries' affairs. Mm-hmm. You declare yourself neutral. You declare, I'm concerned about Argentina, I'm willing to defend Argentina, but what other countries do...
But I'll keep my hands off the other countries.
Yeah. And I do not intervene there. And there he did something entirely different. He sided explicitly with the United States, not the population of the United States, but the government of the United States. And the government of the United States is currently the biggest imperialist country that we have, the biggest warmonger that we have, responsible for more deaths in recent decades than any other country. You don't have to say, you could have simply said, I don't say anything about these things.
The policies of other countries. Professor Hans-Hermann Hoppe, our time is up, and thank you very much for this conversation. Esto es todo por hoy, pero no se lo olvide. Nos vemos la próxima.